Now, why did you say I'm going to make you tear up?
Well, to repeat what you just said we're not going to say, you said you're out here to make more unicorns, which is what I jokingly refer to you as, because there are no good dads among my peers, among young trans people. You know, I know of some people who are on tenuous speaking terms with their dad. That's about as far as it tends to go. And you and I just spent several days together shooting the shit, having a great time, you know, watching TV, horse laughing. And if my gender comes up, it's a setup or a punchline, and not a... The punchline is not me. The punchline is whatever it is. You and I have fun, and nobody else I know in my circles has that. It's not a thing. We don't have good dads.
Chicken or egg? You're not raised by good parents, or when you transition, and feel free to correct my, syntax as we go through this.
Noted, and you're good.
A switch is flipped and you're no longer on good terms with your parents?
I'm going to say egg on that one, the second one. You hear it more commonly about gay people because there are more gay people, but same basic concept. There are perfectly liberal people who voted for gay marriage back when it was on the ballot, and it's totally fine as long as it's not my kid. Very common opinion, and an opinion people don't think they have until they have it. Yeah, no, it's generally it is the parent who cuts things off one way or another. And at the risk of derailing and not quite answering your question, trans youth homelessness is extraordinarily high. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the homelessness rate among trans people, and every complicating factor you add to that makes it worse. It's worse for trans women. It's worse for trans people who are black. It's worse for people in poverty. Every complicating factor that makes homelessness makes homelessness more common happens even more to trans people because we get kicked the fuck out.
There was a word that it now occurs to me you don't hear as much, called runaways. If you went to a city like L.A. and you went outside the Greyhound station, you'd go, oh, look at that. The runaways are piling up like driftwood around here. Is that in the...
Absolutely, that's in the cocktail. Especially because you hear about there being more trans people around now. I would argue that you have...
Definitely.
Yes. I would say that you've got more out trans people. You've got more trans people who are willing to talk about being trans. Because there are a lot of people who are quote-unquote stealth, to a degree, including me, more so when I lived in Texas, who just don't talk about it and you don't notice. But there are also more alive trans people. You hear about people, oh, he was perfectly nice and then he killed himself one day. Well, I ain't saying, I'm just saying.
You're in your 20s, I'm in my 60s. And so sometime, probably in the 1990s, a noted jazz singer named Jimmy Scott, after he died at a ripe old age, was discovered to, have female equipment. He'd been passing himself off as a guy with a super high voice, sort of a castrate tenor.
I couldn't have given you his name, but I know the story.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, that to a jazz buff. I'm not a jazz, super genius, but I like it, and I kind of follow some of the big players. It was a what? Now, cut to 2024. You and I were walking out of a restaurant in Santa Fe the other day, and you've got blue hair at the moment, and you turned to somebody who had colorful hair. It looked, I would say, presented as a tall lady, young lady, like college age.
Sure.
And you said, I like your hair. And the reply came back in a voice deeper than mine. And I like your hair too. And I walked out and I went, this is the world. Thank God. This is the world we live in, where only in my adulthood, the idea of a trans person was a shockaroo. And now it's kind of, oh, you're from Florida too. So am I. I made up an example. It's just a not very important point of identification.
Right. To back up a tad, there's another great example. His name is escaping me, and I may make you edit this in, but there's a very famous doctor whose same situation. When he died, he was outed against his wishes. He actually put in his will, you do not undress me. You bury me in whatever the fuck I'm wearing when I die.
Is that right? Oh.
Future Brandon here. His name was James Barry. He was born in 1789 and died in 1869. He was Irish. He made a huge influence on the world, including, I'm reading now, being the first European to do a C-section in Africa in which both the baby and mother survived. It was a big deal. And he was outed against his will posthumously. But to back up for that example, trans people tend to flock together. We find one another. And in fact, we find one another pre-transition.
You have transdar?
Yes, and not even intentionally. And people argue that that's like social contagion. We force other people to transition. It can't be done. We just find each other. But to back up about that person we ran into, I'm gonna presume she uses she pronouns. And you asked, did you realize when you complimented her hair that she was trans? And I said, no, but I suspected the friend she was next to. So was the friend she was next to trans? I have no idea, but he was wearing a colorful bowling shirt. And to those who know, we dress like that.
I'm so happy to be able to ask you questions and learn. Like, I wouldn't hesitate if somebody said to me, hey, I got a roommate named Larry. Yeah, I think you guys would like each other. You should maybe date. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'm a straight dude. Do you have a similar thing? If somebody goes, oh, I got a roommate that you should maybe consider having coffee with. Do you have a predisposition that would make that a good idea or not? You know, do you have the same sitch going on or that I do?
Sure. On two levels there. I'm going to answer that question twice. First off...
Do you mind the question?
No, not at all.
Okay. Thanks.
I was about to jokingly say everybody. To be clear, not everybody. But a huge amount of people, once they learn that I'm trans, immediately go, hey, I got this nephew who's just coming out. Can I give you his number? Hey, I got this buddy who's like thinking about coming out. Or, you know...
As gay?
As gay, as trans mostly. I think a lot of people have one trans person in their life who they know about, and they immediately want me to meet them. Especially if they're young, I take them up on it. I'll reach out to the kid. I'll say, hey, you okay? I could not tell you how many teenagers I have talked to about what being on testosterone is like, for example.
You're in your 20s and you've been on it about 10 years.
On and off, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm sorry, unfortunately?
Oh, I would love to be back on. I'm currently in a horrendous catch-22 where none of the options are workable. There are 3 ways to get testosterone. I don't want to get lost in the woods because I want to back up a tad, but there's dermals, which are ineffective on me. There are injections, which are abnormally painful for me, and there are pellets, which are very expensive. So I'm working on pellets. There's now scuttlebutt that insurance is starting to cover them, so I'm working on it. I got my first denial letter in the mail just before I left my insurance. You want pellets? Shut up. Anyway, so no, I'm unfortunately off to you right now because I'm stuck in this catch-22 where I can't spend thousands of dollars a month on a pellet.
Gotcha.
But to back up, you asked
if you lived in Fargo. Could you sneak some back from Canada for 50 cents? Is it that kind of deal?
Yeah, no, I've thought about going to Mexico for it. Seriously.
Because you do live 3 hours from Mexico. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't mean like seriously. I mean like I have considered it, and it is
Did you just do a stereotypical gay voice?
I'm allowed. But
It was like, I felt like I was watching a Johnny Carson interview. Go ahead.
but
You're allowed. You got a pass for that.
I'm allowed. But to back up just a tad,
I think we found our teaser for the episode. Go ahead.
But to back up, you asked about if you tomorrow met some cool young trans person, should I introduce you? Yes, and we have a tendency to be friends with one another. Strangers have a tendency, or distant acquaintances have a tendency to try and get us to meet one another. And we tend to date one another, not universally, but there's a phrase, T4T, number 4, because we're cool and edgy. Trans people who only...
Slow down. T for T, number 4.
Yeah, T4T. About to explain that. So it is the number 4 for no reason. It is trans 4, F-O-R, trans. Trans people who only bother dating one another because it is such... I hate to call it tedious, but God, explaining gender to cis people gets old.
I'm one.
You are, and you are incredibly respectful, and I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about that on dating apps, I call myself transmasculine. There are 100 synonyms for trans. There's for me, I'm fine with all the following labels. Hold on, let's go.
Hang on. No. I don't want to go through this because we covered it in the last... Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're back by request, and if... whoever is listening to this episode, we're in 60 countries, 600 cities, 10,000 listeners. So no telling whose ears this conversation has reached. If you find this edge of your seat stuff, go find the episode called "Interview with a Trans Man," and we cover vocabulary some. But I want to go next. I've never. I know you're in the middle of a rant, but I'm going to derail it.
Okay. If I could just quickly say, I call myself transmasculine because cis people know what that is. Maybe. Go on.
You call yourself a gay man?
No, because I sometimes see women.
Okay.
I'm on
Okay.
decisions on labels. I don't have a solid one.
Enough said. Did you used to be a lesbian?
I identified as one at a time. In no small part because, again, people don't know what a trans man is. It wasn't something that existed on my radar. So when I was made aware of butch lesbians at age, I'm going to call it 12, I was like, close enough. I've said this before. I think when I learned what a trans man is, learned the language, read some stuff. First off, I learned the concept and immediately read stuff voraciously. I would say within the month, I came out as trans to very close friends, or at least said I was thinking about
it. Boy, howdy, is this complicated? Because I was going to say when you were born on your birth certificate, it said female, but that's actually not true. But there was a clerical error that turned out to be, like Nostradamus. I'm just going to say that.
Can I just say, we use the term AMAB, assigned male at birth. I'm the only AMAB trans man I know. Go on.
Golly. Yeah. Okay. So I'm confident that some of the people listening right now are like me and don't have a lot of experience here, and so I'll start with the concept dead name. Say more about dead name.
Sure. Dead name is the name on your birth certificate, the one your mom picked out, and it's the name you don't use anymore. Getting dead named, and it is a verb as well. That means what you would expect. If your name is not Larry, and if I were to say, "Hey, Larry," and that would be weird to you.
Hang on. You're going to make things more confusing instead of clearer.
All right, sorry.
When you were born, because I was there, you had a first name that actually, I'll substitute Terry. You had a name like Terry that works just fine for men or women in our current society.
Sure, Pat Elliott.
Thank you. And so when you transitioned in your middle teens, you dropped that one, and that That's your dead name. And it's almost 100% people who, like, let's say your name had been Terry. Does anybody in that situation go, well, Terry's fine for men or women or whatever, I'll just keep Terry? Does that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say most binary trans people.
And slow down. Help me with binary.
Sure. I was about to say, and people who were assigned male at birth who are now women, or people who were assigned female birth who are now men, are called binary trans people, one or the other. There are also non-binary people.
Gotcha.
So
because you strongly present as a bloke, you got facial hair and a deep voice, and you wear boots, and
Sure. Yeah. No. I am a trans man. I am a dude. I jokingly call my gender boring. Anyway, to back up, most binary trans people do not like ambiguous names. They want to have a name.
Nancy.
Exactly. A lot of
Gerald.
Exactly. A lot of binary trans people pick.
I'm sorry. I want to slow down because I'm still not quite getting it. Binary means somebody who now presents pretty strongly as a conventional man or woman that started out with the other thing on their birth certificate. Did I get it? Okay.
Exactly. A stranger would take me for a normal dude, and that would not hurt my feelings. It's what I want to happen.
That's what you want. That's what I was told you were going to want when I got some advice. I was not born understanding any of this. I'm a theater baby. So it is a fact that by the time I was in my teens and to this date, there's never been a time in my life when I didn't have gay buddies and lesbian buddies. But I did grow up in the Jimmy Scott world where if it turns out, there was a trans something or other in the conversation, I didn't know what the hell. I was at sea because it didn't come up once every 10 years. It was not something I had to think about. It wasn't in the world. And this is a better world. Thank God. And thank God you live in LA where you can be yourself and not catch too much. I mean, look, I catch shit for being a cowboy because I wear, boots and pearl snap shirts and a Stetson. I wear a Stetson because I'm bald and I hate being bald. So it's either a toupee or a hat if you're me.
I gotta correct that on the record. You've been wearing stupid hats long before you were balding, and I love you.
Fair enough. Okay, so I'll give myself an A, not an A+. I'll give myself an A on saying when my son was 6, he had a first grade teacher that caused us a lot of trouble. Now, you didn't transition until your middle teens. So that's why I asked on purpose, did you used to be a lesbian? Because you fixed the language for me. You said there was a time when I identified as one. Did I get you good there?
That's how I say it. I nothing is universal. I would say most trans people would say it that way and prefer you talk that way. There are some people who don't mind at all that if you said, for example, back when you were a girl, you did this. That bothers me. That doesn't bother everybody. It's a case by case.
Fair enough. Like my being an addict or an alcoholic. There's almost no situation where that would bother me because I've got 31 years clean and sober. Almost never. Unless, I guess I could construct a scenario where somebody goes, don't loan Sherman your car. He's an alcoholic. Where I'd want to go, hey, whoop, you're right. And there's a little more information to be had here.
This is not a widespread thing, but I've taken to using the phrasing back in the day. And I've had other trans people go, oh, I like that. And we'll use that. So maybe that'll take off.
No. You and I are exceptionally close, very, very close in each other's hearts and stuff. And have been roommates after you graduated high school and so on. So, I talk about you a lot, and I've learned how to massage language, so I'm not saying something that you wouldn't want me to say, and I'm not lying, and I'm not being so vague to somebody who doesn't know what cis or, binary or any of that stuff is. I'll just say, how about this? When my kid was 10, and now I've leapfrogged over a bunch of shit, and you would not mind me saying to somebody, hey, when my kid was 10.
Exactly.
Because you're my kid and you used to be 10.
Correct. I am not a habitual liar, but there convenient lies happen when you're trans, when you don't need to explain this all day, every day. And I have stories about shit that happened at ballet lessons, shit that happened at Girl Scout lessons. And suddenly to that stranger, I have a sister. Because it's just easier to say it happened to her. And it doesn't feel like too much of a lie. I got this same genetics and it's a girl.
Somebody in my life who's also in recovery, I said to her one time, I heard in a meeting one time, in a 12-step meeting, a guy say this, that our goal in recovery is to be 100% accountable 100% of the time. I really like that. And my friend said, 95%, and I spit my coffee out. And so that's become quick code. If I can look up at her and go 95%, give her a wink and go on. But B.B. King said, everybody lie a little.
I have, of course it has happened. I have come out as trans to people who thought I was cis, which is to say not trans, for long stretches of time. And that makes the list is FYI, I don't have a sister. That's come up.
You didn't tell that story particularly well. What you mean is you've had to untangle a lie? You go, remember that time I told you my sister did X? Yeah, I was lying.
Yes.
That I understand.
Yes, I will fess up to that should the situation present itself.
Your namesake was quite a character, and he used to say, well, this never really happened, but when I was in the 5th grade, so he would preface his lies and then tell a Paul Bunyan tall tale. That was a move I've never heard anybody else do. I've been determined in our previous half hour, we do 30-minute episodes. We've got about 8 minutes left here. I've been careful to not hog this conversation and make it about me. This is not about me. I've had an easy life.
It's allowed to be a little bit about you. Go on.
Well, look, when I was about 10, I found a pile of Playboys in an alley, and I said, that's for me. And I've been straight as a die ever since. And I've worked in theater, and I've played guitar in bands with gay folks and all that stuff. And it's been, I'm into what I'm into, and you're into what you're into, and I don't give a shit.
If you were going to learn something about yourself, you'd have learned it by now.
I have known some of the handsomest movie stars in the world. There's nothing there for me. I've never saw, well, for him, no. Anyway.
Meanwhile, I saw a fellow at the post office who I gave a long up and down.
Okay. God, I'm tempted to go on a bunny trail here. Maybe I'll do it when I'm done. But what I want to say is this. When you told me at about age 15 or 16 that please do me a favor and don't call me that name, if you don't mind, the name that I had called you by for 14 years. And I'm going to go on testosterone. I went into a panic. I didn't like it. I didn't want it to be true, especially. I didn't give a shit that you used to identify as a lesbian. That was cool and the gang. But when you talked about taking powerful hormones and all that went with it, okay, what's good about testosterone? Why are you taking it? And in my memory, you said, well, it'll cause me to have to shave, grow facial hair. It'll make my hairline recede. It'll make my voice deeper. It'll make my jaw more prominent and guy-like. And I said, okay, a couple things. I've been shaving since Nixon. It's no fucking bargain. I hate it. And receding hairline, that's a scourge. It's $1 trillion a year blight. And I remember I hit my limit. I've told my friends this. If you ever see me throw my hat on the ground, we're at tilt. That's as mad as I get. I've never punched anybody. I've never gone crazy. I don't have much of a temper, really. Is that true? Fair to say? I don't have much of a temper. And yeah, but when I snatch my hat off and throw it on the deck, you can bet I'm seeing red and there's steam hissing out my ears.
And for the record, I could count on one hand the number of times I've seen you do it.
It's not a decision.
And I'm 27 and we've lived together the bulk of my life.
Okay, so then I got with a wise person who knew everything about the trans community in LA, and they straightened me out. So too long for this, but it put my mind right. Oh, I know. I'll say this much about it. What this person said to me was, Sherman, you're not figuring in. I haven't heard you use the word happiness. And this person said, you're kind of a macho guy, aren't you, Sherman? I said, well, define your terms. I mean, I dress like I dress, and I drive a Cadillac, and I shoot guns, and I eat steak, and so in that way, I guess, whatever. And this person said, well, suppose next time you walked by a mirror, what looked back at you was a good-looking blonde, frilly girl. You would feel like, is this mirror broken? That's not who I am. Why is this looking? So that's what every time your kid gets misgendered by a shopkeeper or a guy at the gas station or looks in a mirror and doesn't look like they feel, it's awful. And this testosterone works pretty fast. So when the jaw pokes forward and the voice drops and the mustache shows up and the hairline goes back and a waiter comes up to you and says, "You fellas want anything to drink?" is going to make him feel 10 feet tall. And this is
I remember the first stranger who said I was a guy. Go on.
This portion of the population is also really prone to suicide. And so turning this around is going to be profound and fast, and you're going to love it. And boy, all of that has come true.
Absolutely. For the record, when I was 16, 17, a guy handed me a cheeseburger. I said, "Thank you." He said, "No problem, brother." And I will never forget that guy.
All right. We don't have a lot more time, so I'm going to get this one out. Then you and I were, surprise, surprise, in a boot and hat store here in Santa Fe. And I am not a lech. I don't creep on teenage girls. It's not in my thinking. I don't look at them as potential dates. And so you and I are bebopping around Boot Town or Boot Barn or whatever it's called. Shepler's, one of those places. And we had a brief exchange with the salesperson because I was looking for the, size 9 Lucchese's, whatever the hell. And then you changed, your demeanor changed. You were like, "Oh, boy." I'm like, "What?" You're like, "Well, I can't ever do that again." And I'm like, "What'd I miss?" And you looked at me and said, "Didn't you see that salesperson?" I'm like, "Maybe, no." "Just spit it out." And you said, "That was a lipstick lesbian all day long." And I don't go like that anymore. And I'm like, I'm fucking lost. I don't know what the rules are anymore. And so from that was 5 years ago or more. And so today, because I'm interviewing you for the radio, I said, "So, did you used to be a lesbian?" Because I wanted to get it out there because there's dumb people like me that want to know how to talk about this stuff without being an asshole. And so what do you want to tell me?
I'll say this. I've had to explain to well-meaning, ignorant people. I have no issue with well-meaning, ignorant people, by the way. If your vocabulary's wrong, if you're coming at me with respect, I don't give a shit.
Sometimes you do. I've seen you get butthurt when somebody's heart's in the right place because they use the wrong word.
Fair enough. I'd like to think I've done some growing up. Have you seen it recently?
Nope. Good. Hey, I'm going to hug you, except it would mess up the audio. Thank you. That was a really cool thing to say.
Thank you. And I've lost my train of thought.
About this, that was a cute girl and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So that is my joke, is the one regret of transition is I no longer have access to hot lesbians. But that...
We're not going to top that if you think I'm going to let you not close on that. Good night, everybody.